Welcome to Public Forum, a community outreach program produced by North Idaho College located on Lake Coeur d'Alene. Featuring guests from around the globe addressing a wide variety of subjects, Public Forum serves to educate and enlighten. Please join host and moderator, political scientist Tony Stewart, in welcoming today's guests.
We're most pleased to welcome you to a two-part series, and in this 2 weeks we're very pleased to bring you programs dealing with the training of dogs, very special dogs, and World Championship trials. Our program's titled 2000 World Championship of Dog Agility, Team USA Mini Division. I welcome to the program one of my colleagues on the faculty at North Idaho College, Barb Davis, who is in the field of natural sciences, and she has two of her dogs with her that have just recently returned from Europe, where they were very, very successful on the USA team. Barb, welcome to our program. We're delighted to have you here, and I would invite you at this time to introduce your two dogs to our audience.
Okay.
And then we're going to be interviewing you, and they're going to be doing some tricks for us.
Sure. Well, these are, this dog here, the gray one is Shimmer, and he's a 5-year-old Shetland sheepdog, and he is a blue merle in color, he's called. And he won his spot on the world team in June at the AKC's first invitational. And then next to him is Aspen here. Sit up there, girl. And Aspen is also a Shetland sheepdog. She's 4 years old. And she was selected 2 weeks later to be on the agility team. So it was quite an honor because I was the first one in the U.S. to have 2 dogs to go. And there's 5 dogs in the mini division that go, and then 5 big dogs, so a total of 10. So it was quite special to get to go.
Well, congratulations to you. And I welcome to the program, as always, our panelist, Steve Shink, who is the Vice President of College Relations at Development North Idaho College, and we'll invite Steve to proceed with the questioning.
Barb, first, congratulations on the World Trials. I know Tony's probably going to talk more about that either later in this show or next week's. I think I'll start my questions with you, let Aspen and Shimmer settle in a little bit and get more comfortable. I'm going to guess a lot of people in the audience, like me, may have seen dog agility trials on television. I've seen them for years. I had no idea until I learned about your competition, the scope of these trials. So, maybe an unfair question, but if you can share with us anything you know about the history of dog agility trials, how it's organized nationally and internationally, and then give our audience some sense of how big this sport really is.
Okay.
I'd appreciate it.
Sure. Well, about 20 years ago, I believe, in England, it first got started. It was kind of a demonstration at, I believe, a Crufts show, and it kind of grew from there. And some people from the U.S. saw it, and about 11 years ago, I think it was 89, and this man, Ken Tatch, was one of the most important in that he came back and actually started a dog agility association. It was called United States Dog Agility Association, and started having trials, and the trials were very spread out, so the people that did go had to travel very far to get to the trials. And it slowly is caught on because it is such a fun thing to do. It's very physical. You can get out and do something active with your dog, and the dogs usually really enjoy it too. And so it's just really caught on all over the country. And then several years ago, American Kennel Club got involved and started also holding trials, and it really took off at that point because of the number of people involved in showing dogs in conformation shows or in obedience, started getting into agility as well. And it's just growing by leaps and bounds, and so it's been really taken off since there. I know the American Kennel Club's been involved in the World Championships. I think it's 5 years that they've been sending a team, and before that, the United States Dog Agility Association used to send a team as well, where there's this once-a-year competition, usually in Europe somewhere, where different countries are represented.
Just for an overview purpose, and I think maybe you just pretty well covered the waterfront, although maybe there's something I don't know. There are conformation competitions where dogs are judged on their appearance and how well they conform to breed standards. Obedience trials, which is different from what you do.
Yes.
And then agility trials. Are we missing anything, or is that?
There's some other things. There's tracking trials. There's even
field trials for
trials
bird
for
hunting
sporting.
dogs. And
there's
herding.
lure coursing for dogs that are sight hounds and so on. So there's even like special beagle trials. So there's some other things, but I'd say those are probably the big ones now. Are the agility, obedience, and conformation.
Any estimate at all of how many people in this country compete in one of those competitions or another?
Well, typically a competition in the Northwest maybe they're usually limited to 300 runs, which isn't always 300 dogs, but that's typical show size where we have 2 rings kind of going on at the same time. The AKC Nationals that I was just at 2 weekends ago, they had 350 dogs entered there, and they don't like them getting a lot bigger than that because then you've got too many rings and a lot of conflicts, so there's usually some way to limit the size of the competition.
I see. Thank you very much.
Barbara, with that, I want our viewers to get a chance to see some of the training that you do and some of the agility tests that you take them through. And we'll ask you to get up now and take your dogs. Our studio is kind of crowded, but I know we've set up a area here for you. Would we do that now? And
sure. Okay. Come on, guys. You get to get up and do something fun.
So the dogs get to go show us what they can do. And
get up.
It's a good time for Rick. They were starting to get sleepy.
Yeah.
We're getting, the lights are warming here, so it's a little hard, but they're very well-behaved dogs. And you might share with us, Barb, the particular first act that you're going to do and how you train for that.
Sure. This is Shimmer again, and what I brought was just a little jump here. Jumping is a real important part of agility, and so you spend a lot of time training them to jump. In the beginning, you start to jump very, very low, and so that the dogs are just jumping little jumps, and then you grow them up into the height that they're supposed to jump eventually. What I spend a lot of time teaching the dogs to do is what to do after they've jumped, because on a course they have to know if they're going off this way or off that way. So you do that both with verbal and physical commands to let them know what to do.
So they can go to the right or left, whatever you
Sure.
tell them to do?
Yeah. So as Shimmer here, come here, buddy. I send him over a jump. Shimmer, go hop right. So he takes a right-hand turn there. So that if I'm heading off that direction, he can do that. Or if we go off this way, come here. Shimmer, hop left. Good boy. Yeah, and you can see he's making a little noise there because he's getting a little excited. Sometimes we want him to turn real quickly around a jump, and so we might show him a treat, and we might go, jump, here, come here, and he learns to come real quick and get us a little treat there, which I left up on the table, so you'll get in a minute, yeah. And so on a typical warm-up before I would go on a show, I might be going, Shimmer, are you ready? Are you ready, ready? Trying to get him a little hyped up. Oh, yeah, you're ready. Okay, ready. Go, hop left. Good boy, let's go. Hop right. Yay, good boy. Hop, come here, hurry all the way around. Hop right. And see, I kind of move that direction so that he knows to go in that direction.
But he'll go in the direction that you ask?
Yeah. So we spend quite a bit of time doing that sort of thing, and except a little jump sequence and so on.
Well, that's just really beautifully done.
And then the other one of the pieces of equipment I brought is the weave poles, where the dogs actually have to weave in and out of these poles, which is probably the trickiest thing for the dog to do, because jumping's pretty natural. They run through tunnels and climb on things, all pretty natural. But weaving through poles is not such a natural thing. So we have.
And Aspen's going to be the one to do.
Aspen gets to demo that one. She said she got to have it.
The fact that Aspen's smaller, is it easier for Aspen to weave through, or does it? They both do this.
Oh, they both do it very well, and they both like the weave poles. It takes them a long time. Like Shimmer, I taught him one winter in the basement down a hallway, and he earned his dinner going through the weave poles. And by the end of winter, he was very good. And Aspen I trained in another manner called clicker training, which is a whole another thing in itself. Come here, Shim. We'll get you out of the way. Sit.
And I think you've told us, Barbara, that there's a little competition between them, and some days one is more eager than the other.
Yeah, that's right. I'm going to grab my little bit of food here and talk about.
They should be rewarded. They might not continue to do it without that.
Well, they probably would, but I wanted to talk a little bit about how we first started them. Aspen here. Is we show them we have some food, and they have to go through this pole with the pole on their left-hand shoulder. And so they couldn't go in the wrong way or go in that pole. And so you just show them a little bit of food, and you would lure them back and forth like this. And it takes them a long time to figure out what you're trying to get them to do. But eventually, if you repeat it enough, you get something like this. Go weave, 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 weave. Yay! Go weave, yay! Go, 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 go! And she really likes to weave. And if you watch her front feet, you know she has a pattern where her front feet kind of go like this in a little kind of jumping pattern. And we want them to get into a pattern. That's when they learn to love it.
It becomes a little artistic.
It's rhythmic, yeah. Ready? Ready, ready, ready? Here. Go weave, weave, go, 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 go. Yay! Out, weave, whoops. she went in the wrong way there, so we went, whoops, there you go, go, and here comes Shimmer, he's going to help too, yeah.
Going to have a little competition there already.
Go, wee. He said, I can do it as good as her. So what we practice is getting them to go in at odd angles, because in a competition they might have very difficult angles. So I might practice sending one of the dogs clear from back here. Come here, Shim, turn around. You can help too. Come on, turn around. There we go. They're both kind of eager here. Go wee, whoops. And see, he skipped a pole. So we just say whoops and make him do it again. No cookie for that. Here we go. Wee, yay, good boy. Penny's up. There you go, good. So that's the kind of thing we work on. I spend a lot of time getting them to go fast and so on.
So I assume that you have a somewhat rigid schedule every week, that they work out every week. And
come on. In the summer, come on, Aspen. Just,
we're going to have a disaster here.
I don't think so. You sit down here. Okay. Behave yourself. They're
all excited about
their
performance.
Now. Sit. Yeah. Settle down. Sit. In the summer, I probably work my 4 dogs an hour daily. So they get like 15 minutes apiece. And but in the winter, sometimes hard to get all that in. We have to rent a barn because the snow's all over the equipment now. I didn't get it all in before the snow flew here. And so they can't run because the surface is too slick. And so a bunch of us rent a barn in the winter, and we haul the equipment out of a stall and set it up and practice for a night, put it back away. And so they get a little bit of it this in the winter, but it is hard keeping them in shape through the winter months here.
Now, before we go back to Steve, we have a tape that you brought with you that was given to you at the games in Helsinki, Finland, I believe. And we'll ask our staff if they will put the tape up and run it, and while it's running, we'll just watch it, and at the end of it, we'll ask you a couple of questions about the videotape that was given to you as a gift, and your dogs are involved in this as well as other dogs.
Music is the vibe, so open up your eyes. Time is running out, so find the feeling.
Bum diggy 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 bong diggy bong. Bum diggy 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 bong diggy bong. My Italian, the Spanish, and the Mexican. Yes, God put on the earth all kind of man. Japanese, German, and Colombian, Chinese, and the Russian, and the African, American, Venetian, Canadian, Dutch, and the Swedish, Brazilian, to the Syrian, the Indian, and Jamaican.
So find the feeling. So find the feeling. Think about the way that we live today. Think about the way how some people play. Think about the way that we live today. Think about the way. Think about the way. Think about the way that we live today. Think about the way. Think about the way. Think about the way that we live today. Think about the way how some people play. Think about the way that we live today. Think about the way. Think about the way.
It's just marvelous and shows what incredible talent they have. One more question before we go back to Steve, and that is, when the contest was over in Helsinki, I believe that your team won the silver medal.
Yes, that's right.
Well, congratulations.
Thank
That's
you.
wonderful.
Thank you.
Steve Sheen.
Barb, it looks like the trainers need to be in pretty good shape as well as the dogs.
Doesn't hurt, yeah.
You work out almost year-round on this project?
Well, when I started getting more involved, where it became more than just I'll do this on the weekends a little bit, I started really trying to run more and lose some weight. I did lose about 15 pounds. Because if you can run and keep up with your dog, you might be there to help them understand what's next just a little better. There's some very good-sized handlers that are very talented that have done a lot of work doing distance training. But the folks that can run sometimes have a bit of advantage over them because they can be in the spot to help assist their dog as much as possible, figure out what's coming up next in the course.
I'm glad you mentioned helping your dog because it's real obvious from the tape that you're right there with the dog on the floor during the competition. And I think I saw in that tape looked like a gentleman in black slacks and a white shirt. Is he
That was a judge,
A
yeah.
judge, all right. Are there things you can't do?
Yes, you can't touch the dog, and you can't swear. And that's about it. You can't act like you're angry at the dog either or threatening in any way. But one of the fun things is you can assist your dog as much with commands, with body language, or anything that you want to. And so that's very helpful. And one of the fun things about it, if I need to tell the dog 3 times to go into the tunnel, I can tell him 3 times. There's no points off for that. And you can also root your dog on. And when I'm in competition, there's certain places on a course where I will kind of woohoo to them, to kind of make it more exciting to try and speed them up a little bit. And so it is a real team sport with you and your dog. And it's kind of a 50-50 deal, If the dog makes a mistake, actually, it's more often the handler miscued the dog. They didn't know where they're supposed to go. And so things happen quick because they're fast. And that's part of the fun of it is seeing if you can cue your dog quickly enough and figuring out how you're going to do that. There's kind of some strategy involved when you're figuring out where you're going to be when, how you're going to cue the dog to do what's next, and so on.
These dogs are obviously well-conditioned athletes. Do you work with them? Do you condition them aside from actually running them through the agility course?
I think it's really important that they stay in shape. Probably agility dogs are kept a bit slimmer than the average family pet, just like you would expect anybody that's doing jumping and so on. And then I try to make sure they get some basic exercise every day. Sometimes it might be just throwing a ball for them, especially as the weather gets tricky. Little Aspen, the little black one, had an injury last year where she hurt one of her ligaments in her leg, and so she went through quite a workout getting back in shape. She did some acupuncture actually, and then as things healed up, then we did a very slow regimen, first walking and trotting only, and then slowly real little jumps and building her back up and into condition, which actually took quite a ways because she was off about 6 weeks where she wasn't allowed to exercise and she lost a lot of muscle tone. And so it was quite the regiment. There's some people that, if they have the opportunity, they actually swim their dogs and do some other things. It's a little difficult in our part of the country to do a lot of swimming.
Especially in the winter.
Yeah.
Were you involved in dog agility training and trials before you got these 2 dogs? They're both relatively young animals.
When I got Shimmer, Shimmer came back from actually what we call a studback puppy. I owned his sire, and a female was bred to him, and he was the pick that I got back from that. And that was just when I was getting into agility, was about that time. And the gal that bred to my stud dog had some agility equipment, and so that's how I kind of started with her. And I started an older dog that I had, and he was a nice little dog, kind of moderate pace, so it was very nice to learn the sport on to start with. And then I started training Shimmer as a pup, and Shimmer just thought it was just so cool. He has quite a little attitude. My husband calls him the little prima donna dog because he thinks he's so cool. And so it was just so much fun. We just had a great time together. So that's when I started getting more involved. And then the other dogs that came along, the little black one here, I bought from a gal, Pat Pierce. She's down from one of my dogs. She's a granddaughter of one of my dogs. And I really got her to keep as a breeding animal. Because I'd bred dogs for many years and wanted to still have a female. But she liked it so much, she'd stand at the fence and she'd see Shimmer running and she'd go, "Arr, arr, 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 let me do it, And I started working her and she just was very dynamic. And so pretty soon all the dogs that I had were doing agility. And they all enjoy it so much. Sometimes it's really hard because it's hard to get time to work all 4 of them. And but you hate to leave 1 out or 2 out, and so.
Well, if Tony will allow me one last question, it sure seemed to me, and I guess I'm asking you to let me know whether you agree, but it sure seems that this is not work for these dogs, that they just absolutely love it and enjoy it.
They do. Last week I hurt my neck and wasn't able to work the dogs at all, and by the end of the week they were like coming unglued because they had got to do nothing. They just love it. In fact, they kind of, it's hard to almost keep them out when each other's working because they are so excited for their turn to come. You saw Shimmer break his stay there because he saw Aspen working and finally said, that's it, I've got to come do it too. So they really do enjoy it. And a lot of that's keeping a good attitude though when you're training them as well. If you keep real positive, like you might have heard me say whoops when he made a mistake, rather than saying no or getting no, that's wrong, then that shuts the dog down. But just whoops and try it again, keeping it light, then they keep a real good attitude about it usually.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
I would just add the note that Shimmer is, with all that personality, knew that he was on television, and or that Aspen was, and he wanted to share the limelight.
Yeah, that's probably right, yeah.
Sitting there in the chairs, I know that Aspen a lot of times sits down and doesn't look
doesn't
up as
care,
much.
yeah.
She doesn't care as much. As Steve has said, it's really a lot of fun. But all your dogs are eager to perform, and I suppose they're like humans, though, in the sense that some days we feel if you're playing a sport, like Steve loves golf, and some days I'm sure that he enjoys it more than others or does better at the game.
No bad days. Some are better.
So
Oh, yeah.
that's what I was attempting to say. And the same with tennis, that I play tennis. Some days you're just doing better. You found that true with your dogs, and even in shows that they're involved in. The performance is not always the same.
Exactly. There's a lot of inconsistencies that people ask me which one of these two dogs is fastest a lot, or who's fastest. And actually any four of my dogs can win on a certain day depending on how they reacted in the ring and so on. And some of them do have better days than others, and I have better days than others. Sometimes my reaction time is bad. And so one of the fun things about the sport is it doesn't matter who's at the top. They can always be beat because things happen. It just happens so quick. And some days the dogs are on better than others. I was just at a show in Massachusetts 2 weeks ago, which was the AKC Nationals, and I had a beautiful run with Shimmer. I would have won that round. It was round 2, but he knocked a bar off the jump. And I looked at the video trying to figure out why he had done it, and he just didn't jump high enough. He just knocked it down for no particular reason. And sometimes that just happens. Things go wrong, and you're out. That meant we weren't going to win that weekend. And so no matter how good someone is, there's always room for error and subtle things that go wrong. And
Are there things you can do, like a day or two before, though? Do they get more rest, or are there anything that you can do to prepare the dogs so that they are more likely to perform at the level that they are capable of doing?
Basically trying to keep them well and on edge, but not overdoing and not underdoing it. So it's like when I mentioned I usually work them about 15 minutes a day when things are working well. That's really enough for them, because if you really drill them, they start getting bored with it. But they need enough so that they're sharp and that they're paying attention. You're used to how quick they do something, so you're ready to react and make your next move to tell them where to go next. And so a lot of it is, once they're at this level, it's just keeping that timing between you and the dog so that you know that they're going to jump this jump and you can move over here to get ready for the next thing. And it's different with different dogs when they will commit to something, or whether that move might pull them away from the jump before they do it.
Is there any warm-up, or do you do anything with them the day that they perform, or you just wait?
Basically, I take them out for a good walk, and then each dog I take and put over a warm-up jump, which is sort of like we had here in the studio, where you have one jump to warm them up on. Little Aspen, because of her having an injury, I tend to walk her out more after exercising than I do the other ones, because once injured like that, it can flare back up. And actually, I do some massage with her sometimes, and some stretches. She stretches on command sometimes, which is kind of cute. I should have had her do that down there. But so that's mainly it, just stuff to make it fun. And they have their little doggy treats, And so no matter what happens, whether we had a good run or bad run, they still get a reward for it. And if I'm upset, I give them the reward, tell them good dog, and then I go up be upset, not around them and just around myself.
That's important. Performing, not knocking anything over and getting through, but also it's speed. I sense from watching that they're like
Right.
kind of course racing their time.
Sure. First, you want to go clean. You have to go clean to be winning, and then second is the speed. And so basically, there's so many good ones now that you've got to go for the speed. You have to, just take the risk that something will go wrong. And the faster the dog, more likely something might go wrong when you're going at a high speed. But that's part of the thrill of it is when you can get a fast run and have it be a clean run, as we call it. Then hopefully that's a winning run.
And I noticed there was a larger dog that was performing, and I couldn't believe how fast he went and weaved in and out.
Right.
That was a rather long
Yeah.
amount of poles that he had to go through, but he was really fast, wasn't
Sure,
he?
sure. Yeah, there was quite a few border collies. What that was that the film was done at the AKC Invitational, which was last June, and then the man that made the film gave it to us as a present to each team member. Got one of those of the dogs, and those were the 10 dogs that went over to Finland. And so mostly saw border collies on the big dog team, and there was one Australian Shepherd, and then mostly saw the Shetland Sheepdogs on the mini team, but there was one Cocker Spaniel as well. And those particular breeds, the border collies and Shelties, tend to be very natural at agility.
Steve, we have about 2 minutes.
Well, since we're talking about breeds, it does seem like the divisions are separated by size.
Mm-hmm.
Do all the competitors, all the competing dogs have to be purebred dogs?
In this particular event, they do. To go to the World Championships, they have to have a pedigree from their country, and so they have to be purebred. The other association I mentioned earlier, United States Dog Agility Association, allows mixed breeds in, and there's another association that does as well. So there is an avenue for the mixed breeds to have fun in agility as well, and there's so many events now that pretty much all over the country there's some place that no matter what kind of dog you have, you can do agility with it.
And it does appear that there are favored breeds. Most of the dogs in your group were herding dogs, small
Sure.
herding dogs.
Yeah, they're light and they're quick and agile, and they listen to you. That's the other thing. There's some breeds that are really built for agility, but they aren't quite as willing to do what you tell them. So it's much tougher. But there's some people who are successful with some of those breeds, and occasionally you'll see a good one of some different kind of breed.
Thank you.
So dogs are like horses and other animals. They some of them just have that extraordinary performance, and they're in a class by themselves. On that note, Barbara Davis, we are bringing our program to a conclusion, and we thank you so much for having your beautiful dogs here and showing us what happened at the 2000 World Championship of Dog Agility. And I'd like to remind our viewers that might have turned into the program after it was in progress that we will have you back next week, and we're
Okay.
going to continue to talk about a Team USA mini division and World Championships. And again, we're very proud that you're one of our colleagues at North Idaho College, and not only are you outstanding in your academic work, but also this hobby is just it's got to be delightful to you and to us. And on behalf of Steve Shink and our staff, we thank you very, very much for being with us today.
Thanks a lot for having us.
Ladies and gentlemen, I know you've enjoyed this program as much as we've enjoyed bringing it to you. We'd like to invite you to be with us again next week. At the same time, we'll continue with this show on dogs and championships. Until then, please have a good week. I am Tony Stewart.
Recorded on the campus of North Idaho College, Public Forum is the longest-running entirely college-produced program on PBS. Each episode is pre-recorded live and is an educational outreach from North Idaho College. Please join us again at this same time next week for another edition of Public Forum on this public television station. Welcome to Public Forum, a community outreach program produced by North Idaho College located on Lake Coeur d'Alene. Featuring guests from around the globe addressing a wide variety of subjects, Public Forum serves to educate and enlighten. Please join host and moderator, political scientist Tony Stewart, in welcoming today's guests.
We are most pleased to welcome you back to our second week of a show that we did last week and are continuing today. We're so excited to bring it to you. It's titled 2000 World Championship of Dog Agility, Team USA Mini Division. We have two guests this week that were involved in the contest in Helsinki, Finland. And so welcome to the program, first of all, Jeff Davis and his spouse, Barb Davis, that are involved with the guests with two dogs here today that they did take to the show. Welcome back. And we enjoyed, Barbara, interviewing you last week so much. And Jeff, welcome to the program this week. We're delighted to have you here. And as always, I'm very pleased to have Steve Shink, our regular panelist. He is the Vice President of College Relations and Development at North Idaho College. And we will invite Steve to commence today's questioning.
Tony, thank you. I got to point out to begin with that Aspen has clearly gotten comfortable with the studio. She's all but asleep over here. You know, we talked a lot about dog agility trials in the first show, but we certainly mentioned your silver medal performance in Helsinki, Finland. We didn't talk much about that, though. Could you take us through just a little bit of the competition, how it unfolded, and talk a little bit about how you won that silver medal?
Sure, gladly. It's sort of set up in a way like gymnastics is, where there's individual competition and there's a team competition. And so the way it was set up, Shimmer was on the team, and so he competed with a dog team of 4 dogs where they picked the top 3 runs out of the 4. And Aspen was in the individual competition only. So on Saturday when we began the competition, Aspen was my first dog to run. And it was an interesting course where they had the tunnel type thing they go into, where they had 2 entrances that were very close, and then right next to one entrance was a jump here, and she had to go into this tunnel entrance. So we're coming at high speed to this tunnel, and she cut in front of me and went in the wrong tunnel entrance. And so 6 obstacles into the course, we were done, we were out. And it was tough, you know, you'd practice all summer getting ready for this thing, and boom, you know you're out like that. And I figured I'd probably done something wrong. She could care less which end of the tunnel she went in. And so I'd miscued her. It was very subtle, but she misunderstood what I wanted. And so she and I went out and had a good cry together. Or, well, I had the cry, and she walked along. And so then we sat and for a little while, and I told people that she told me, she says, "Mom, I'm a dog, and you're human. Let's go have some fun now, okay?" So you have to get on with things. So I had Shimmer to run in the afternoon. And so our team ran, and we had a little Cocker Spaniel on the team that was our first dog to run, and she had a nice, what we call clean run with no mistakes, with a pretty good time. And then our other 3 members were all Shelties, or the Shetland Sheepdogs, which were a little faster dogs. And so the second Sheltie ran, had a very good run, and then Shimmer went, and he had a very fast run. He did have one scary moment where he was jumping a jump and looked at what we call the A-frame. He thought that's where he should go next. And instead he was coming to another jump, and I had to call him a couple times, and he looked at the jump, and U.S. fans kind of go, "Ooh," you can hear him. But he turned and got the whole sequence correct and had a very good time. And then our last dog ran and also had a very good time. And at the end of Saturday's run, we were in 3rd place, so we were very excited about our placement. And also our big dog team had done well. They'd had 3 clean runs, so they were doing well as well. So the next day we go in, and Aspen got to run the individuals, and she did fine, but it didn't count for anything. It was just for fun. And then we went down kind of backwards with the team competition, and 4th place behind us was Czechoslovakia. They were 0.05 seconds behind us, so we didn't have anything in the bag by any means. And they ran just before us, the 4th place team, and they had a very good go. And so then our dogs went, and we had a really a good what we call jumpers run, where it was mostly jumps, tunnels, and weaves. And all the dogs ran very pretty. And we didn't know it at that time, but we ended up being the best team of the jumpers run. And so we were watching this big scoreboard, and in about a minute after we got done running, the numbers came up that we were still in 3rd. So we knew we had a medal, and we were making it to the podium. So it was just a big excitement then. And you could hear the U.S. fans and rooters. They were getting excited and going on. And then the next team went, and they also had a very good go. But we beat them out by about 0.2 seconds, and so we moved up to silver. And then the top team to go was Finland. And so they had a good go, and we watched the numbers, and they came up, and they ended up beating us out by 0.24 seconds for the gold. As soon as that was done, I mean, the second that happened, here comes Finland out on the floor with a flag. Here we come out on the floor in a big U.S. flag, and the other dog team members and support. Some of the supporters came out, and so all the teams were out on the floor and flag waving and cheering. And we ran by the U.S. rooting section, and they're yay. So it was very sort of Olympic-like thing, and so it was very exciting to be with really the top competitors in the world and do that well, you know, and be behind the top place team by just such a little bit, you know, just that little look that Shimmer gave at that A-frame, if I could have tightened him up, might have put us into 1st, and that was pretty much true for all of us. We had some little turn or something that wasn't quite as good as it could have been, and so it was very exciting, very Olympic-like feeling, and they had a little ceremony at the end with you on a podium and the whole bit, and when Finland got up for the gold, they played Finland's national anthem. And
Just like the
yeah,
Olympics.
yeah. So it's set up very Olympic-like.
Well, again, congratulations.
Thanks very much.
Yes. Jeff, we want to thank you for being here too, and I know that that your spouse Barb does most of the training and actually performing with the dogs. I know we're going to show some video in a few minutes and how that happens. But tell us about your role. You're so supportive, and you travel with her. And I know that you have a lot of props and so forth that have to be constructed. Share with us some of the things that you do to be supportive.
Well, first of all, it's an emotional thing, I think, because I'm behind her, and she does good, so her enthusiasm is there, and she's eager, and so it just kind of carries over to me. And of course, the more you win, the more you want to win, and the more you want to compete, and we just enjoy doing that. And so I stay home and take care of usually the other dogs that are at home. So somebody's got to be there and feed them and take care of them. So I do that. And occasionally I build equipment or repair stuff or something like that. So then I'm still kind of playing a background role.
Right. But both of you are obviously very close to the dogs and spend time with them and so forth. We talked last week with Barb about the training of the dogs. I think at this point I'm going to ask our staff who are listening from my cue to let's bring up the videotape. This is tape from the 2000 World Championship of Dog Agility in Finland, and we are going to air it, and you'll hear music, and you'll see the performance for viewers who weren't with us last week so they can see it this week. We'll play the video at this time.
The flock around the clock non-stop as I would tell ya.
Music is the vibe, so open up your eyes. Time is running out, so find the feeling. So find the feeling. So find the feeling. So find the feeling.
Bum diggy 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 bong diggy bong. Bum diggy 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 bong diggy bang. Him a Italian, the Spanish and the Mexican. Yes, God put on the earth all kind of man. Japanese, German and Colombian, Chinese and the Russian and the African, American, Finnish and Canadian, Dutch and the Swedish, Brazilian, to the Syrian, the Indian and Jamaican.
So find the feeling. So find the feeling. Think about the way that we live today. Think about the way how some people play. Think about the way that we live today. Think about the way. Think about the way. Think about the way that we live today. Think about the way. Think about the way. Think about the way that we live today. Think about the way how some people play. Think about the way that we live today. Think about the way. Think about the way.
Barb, that is just so exciting. It does give you even viewing it, the sense of Olympics, and it's in a really lovely setting. And do you think that this will become part of not only a growth in what you're doing, but part of the Olympics?
Well, actually, what I have heard through the grapevine is they are planning to apply to the Olympics as a demonstration sport. They have to have a championship with so many countries or something for a certain length of time, and I guess they've achieved that now. So I think it'd make a great demonstration sport in the Olympics. So that would certainly change it too, making it part of that. So it'd be interesting to see if that comes to be.
With the dogs and all your training that you have with them, when you get to these events, such as the one in Finland, is there some kind of attempt to create some kind of atmosphere or rapport between the dogs, particularly on the team action where they're going to have to run together?
Well, they don't do too much with the dogs really side by side. I mean, they really don't have to interact other than being able to be in line to get ready for their run. We did do some things where we got to practice at a club in Finland, let us use their facility, which was pretty interesting in itself. It was right in Helsinki in a public park, and there was just a big fence around this area where they had their dog equipment. And and we just went in there and used their equipment, but it was kind of interesting that it was in a public park. We certainly don't have anything like that here in the U.S. And so we got to practice there. And then before we went, we had this event where you saw the filming done with the Invitational, where Shimmer won his spot on the team. And then we had a practice together where we had a coach who went through with us what things will be different, what some of the judging rules are a little different in the overseas rules and so on. And then the day before the competition, each team gets so much time to practice. We had about a half hour on the floor. And as you saw, that it's carpeting that you practice, that the event is on. And it was very interesting because about the first 10 minutes that we were practicing, Shimmer had a lot of problem with the footing of the carpeting. He was slipping and he was falling in the weed poles and was really having quite a time, where Aspen was handling it fine. And I did have the option to pull Shimmer and run just Aspen or the other way around. And but luckily, as the practice continued, Shimmer figured out, how to handle himself on the different surface. And by the end of the practice, was doing really well. So we left it as it was, with him being on the team and her being in the individual event, as it worked out very well because he did a great job.
It's like football players, whether they're on grass or not.
Right, sure.
They have to adjust to go from. So dogs are able to figure that out and adjust.
Only you don't get to change shoes.
Yeah, you don't get to change shoes.
That's right.
I thought Barb was going to say to us, well, I put some shoes on him and adjusted to that process. Steve Sheen.
I want to get to a line of question that I wanted to be sure and make some time for, because I've got to believe people are watching this and thinking, and I assume correctly, that this would be a wonderful activity, sport, for an entire family to be involved in, husband, wife, kids, and pets. These clearly seem to be pets, not just
definitely are,
athletes.
yeah.
How would someone get started?
Well, there's some dog training clubs in the area and some private trainers. There's a little bit going on here in Coeur d'Alene where there's some people.
Let me define our area for you, and Tony's better at it than I am. What this show will be seen in?
It covers all of Idaho and portions of 6 other states, and like Washington, Montana, and Oregon.
Oh, well, there's lots going on.
And in Canada, we want to forget our Canadian friends,
Sure.
in British Columbia and Alberta.
And I wanted you to know that, just in case there's some regional centers you know of, or some locations in bigger cities that people could access. But please let me let you get back to your answer.
Well, in what's happened in most areas is either agility clubs or obedience clubs have taken agility on. In the Spokane area, the Spokane Dog Training Club has some classes that people can start their dogs and get them used to the equipment and so on. There's some people doing some private training. A lot of times if you just ask around different obedience people or things, or look in the phone book, you can actually find the clubs. And
Internet
then,
search under agility trials
Agility.
would probably be a good.
Yeah, there's AKC has a website, akc.org, and they have organizations listed in there where people can look for their areas. And it's growing all over the country, where, like, I know Helena, Montana is planning to have a show for the first time this next year in agility. So it's coming up everywhere.
Jeff, do you have an entire course at your home where
Yes,
you
we
and the
do.
dogs can practice?
Yeah, we have, actually our home sits on about 5 acres out by Newman Lake. And part of it, courtesy of the ice storm, we ended up with more space than we had originally started with, but then we pulled some trees out and leveled some ground and whatnot. So we've got, I think, pretty much all the equipment that's used, and it's not as big and spacious as a regulation course, but it's sure enough to have a fair amount of practice on.
Did you build most of that yourself, and is it something most people who are reasonably handy could do pretty
Sure.
easily?
I think I did build all that we have, and there's a couple of magazines that are out too that oftentimes
That's a good.
monthly articles will have a thing in there on how to build it, and it could be just small PVC type equipment or into major carpentry for different things you might use. A lot of it's pretty straightforward, and the instructions usually are pretty clear too, so it's not too difficult to build.
And Barb, if I can go back to you for a second, you're obviously competing at the very highest levels of the sport, but is this doable for people who have a sincere interest in it, and can they do it on a much more casual basis?
Yeah, they sure can. There's in all of the venues, there's a novice level that you start at, where basically if the dog can do each piece of equipment and get around in just a reasonable amount of time, they can get the first titles. I mean, there's basset hounds titling and all kinds of dogs. And as they go up in level, the times do tighten up. So you don't see too many basset hounds at the top levels, but there's certainly many odd breeds that do compete at the higher levels. Maybe they're not winning the class, but they don't have to win the class to do well. The titles are based on just getting through there clean and under time. And so there's in each of the venues, there's various titles you work on throughout it. And so a lot of people don't certainly spend the time I do doing it. They maybe go to their class and they have minimal equipment at home, usually some weed pulls and a couple jumps, and they just practice, once a week or so. And their dogs get 6 months to a year in pretty good shape where they can do pretty good, and they just go out to have fun that weekend. There's a lot of people that don't really travel very far out of the area, and they just go for the weekend and see what happens. And if they qualify, they do, and if they don't, oh well, try next time, and go up through the titles that way. So it is a nice family sport. You do see a fair amount of families, and there's a fair number of youngsters showing. AKC has a junior showmanship program now, and a lot of kids have shown for a long time. There's a little gal I competed with this summer at ESPN, had their first agility show that went with their Great Outdoor Games, and the young girl, she got the gold and we got the silver, and she's only 16 years old, so that was a pretty cool thing to see, and her dad was there with her and stuff.
Very good. Thank you very much.
I want to follow up on Steve's questioning about people who might be thinking about getting involved in this, and some of them will be like you and Jeff, and Jeff just made this comment ago that you take it rather seriously. I mean, you're great with your dogs and you have fun, but you love winning. Mm-hmm. It becomes a part of what you're doing. Both in your case and others that may be getting involved, is it a little bit like horse racing where they spend a tremendous amount of time and money, and the great farms in Kentucky and all where they breed horses from winning horses. Do you have any way of determining in that process that some dogs are just going to be much better at it, and how would you select dogs for your competition?
Well, I was very lucky because I did breed dogs for a lot of years for conformation, and I had two things that I always looked for to stress, and one of them was their temperament, and the other was that the body was built well, that they were well put together, as opposed to breeding for a coat or a pretty head or that type of thing. And so when I did start getting into it, those are really the two big components to having a good dog. Is the temperament has to be there, where dogs are an upbeat kind of dog. Mine are maybe wired a little bit more than people might want for a family pet sometimes, because they really want to do something. But as long as you're active with them, I mean, they make good pets as well. They'd be playing ball or something else. And so those are the two big things I look for. And but I don't think there's many people breeding for agility per se. Maybe starting to in the border collies because they're so popular. And certainly, like myself being a breeder, I don't breed a lot, but when I had my last litter, they ended up the entire litter went to proven agility homes, and I did breed it specifically for agility. And the pups are 5.5 months and very dynamic. They're very sure of themselves and built very well. So those are the main things you look for. And so in a family pet, it's really important the dogs get out and are socialized so that they're sure of themselves. They're not scared of the surroundings, because there's a lot of people and dogs there. And then the other thing is that they're just physically strong. And even if they aren't the best put together, if they're well conditioned before you start, you don't want a big, fat, overweight dog doing agility. You've got to get the weight off of them so that they're not going to hurt themselves. It's like a person. You wouldn't want a big, heavy person jump in those jumps. Eventually, you're going to break something down. And so getting them in conditions is real important. And once they are, most of the dogs can do it pretty good as long as they're brought up through it gradually.
Thank you. Before we go back to Steve, because we don't want to lose this on our show, you have some socializing, those things. You trade jackets and so forth, and you brought some of your jackets with you. Would you show those to us?
Sure. Well, we have a team uniform, and part of which I have on is the shirt. And then Jeff has on the Rooters jacket that they had. They had all those. And so... Oh, yeah, we had a lot going on. So they had told us before we went that you might want to buy an extra jacket to trade. So here is our team uniform jacket here, very Olympic looking. It had USA here and had the American Kennel Club, World Championship, Agility Team 2000, and Iams Dog Food that makes Eukanuba was our sponsor and so on. So I bought an extra jacket, so I started doing some wheeling and dealing. And so I got a gal from Finland came up and wanted to trade uniforms, so they turned out to be the winning team. And so we see Surti, which is Friskies in Finnish, and had the Finland. And so I got that jacket out of the deal. And
That's
then,
how this show came about. You were at school and you were wearing that Finnish jacket.
Sure.
And so I came up and said, "What's going on,
What's
Barb?"
going on with that? And then I had another gal that wanted to trade, and so I traded her one of these shirts and a whole bunch of USA paraphernalia. I had some hats and some scarves and pins. And so she was from Luxembourg, so this was the Luxembourg uniform. And I really liked the back of their jacket. It had this kind of emblem, World Cup team, and the kind of, you can kind of see a dog and an A-frame going there.
Yeah.
So that was pretty cool. Got all that. And then last week, where did I put this? 2 weeks ago, we were at the AKC Nationals, and they had a special awards for the team at that time. And they gave us new winter jackets, which were these nice leather jackets, and they had in the back the American Kennel Club logo, 2000 AKC World Team, and a mini team silver medalist there. And so I ended up with quite an array of jackets here. So I pick out different ones. I'm only wearing this one now. It's cold. And so I've had a lot of fun with all these different jackets. And Jeff did some trading. He could tell you about that.
Well, I'm a hat collector anyway, and they had these hats for sale out in front for everybody. And then, of course, when you're in the stands, there's people walking through from all countries that, well, they've got pins or buttons or jackets, hats, all kinds of things to trade. And so it's just a wheeling dealing thing, you know. Well, I'll trade you one of these, but I want two of those instead, you know. And then if you didn't particularly like it, well, then you switch around and trade with somebody else for something else. And so most of the pins I have were traded with the American pins that we had, because that's a big popular item is the pins, and just going on all the time. It's like a giant flea market, and it was enjoyable, if nothing else, just to meet these people too, because there's always a language barrier, but in the midst of trading, there's really not a language barrier, you know, because everybody knows what everybody else is after. And oh yeah, there was a Frenchman who I think he just was pulling them out of a dispenser on his back or something like that.
A Frenchman makes sense in this
Yeah.
context. Yeah.
And they were just little small bottles like that, and I watched him a couple times, and he was trading with somebody like that, and he'd pull one out of his jacket, and he was trading it, and then, okay, that's done, now go on to the next guy, and up comes another bottle again, you know, and he just kept doing this, and I don't know, he must have gone home with a lot of stuff.
He had a trench coat on.
Yeah. Kind of clinked when he walked, I suppose, you know.
Steve Sheen.
Now, these two dogs obviously look to me like pretty good travelers, but Coeur d'Alene, Idaho to Helsinki, Finland is not a trip to the corner grocery store.
True enough.
How did you get yourselves and them to the competition?
Well, first we flew down from Spokane Airport to San Francisco, and the little one can ride in a Sherpa bag, which is a bag that fits under the seat in the airline. And she's a very good traveler. She travels well that way, and she just falls asleep in there. And so she took a ride in the Sherpa bag, and Shimmer did as well. He's probably a little bit big for one, but he got to go as well. So they both went inboard under our feet, sort of. And then we had the long flight from San Francisco to Frankfurt. And I was a little concerned in case they had to go to the bathroom or something, you know. And so I took in the pet stores now, they have these things they call pee pads for housebreaking puppies. I thought, well, if they get desperate, I could maybe take one of these in the bathroom with me, and maybe they would go on it. But as it turned out, they just slept the whole trip, and were really good. They were very comfortable. They've traveled so much with me throughout the United States and on other flights. So Shimmer's been to New York and to California, and she's been around quite a bit. And so they both handled it real well. They're pretty seasoned travelers and have a lot of miles, more miles on them than Jeff does.
By far, sure.
I want to follow up real quickly on this notion of a family getting involved. And I know in your family, Barb, you're the primary trainer. But Jeff, do you ever train these dogs? And could people who are interested in getting started team train a dog and both handle it, or would it be better if they had two dogs and each person works with one dog exclusively?
I would think to each person have a dog, because, you know, obviously everybody has their own style, and then the dog would be more acclimated to one particular person. But we've got one dog, PJ, who somehow in her own mind has become my dog. And she'll work for anybody. But she seems to enjoy me the most. And the few times I run around a track or whatnot, she's usually at the next obstacle waiting for me. Or I'll get lost on the course because each place you go to is numbered. And she'll already be down there waiting for me, because I'm lost and trying to find my way along, and she'll stop and wait,
That gives you a lot of self-esteem when the dog finds it easier than you, right?
Yeah, it does, really.
Well, Barb, and we don't have much time left, but that relationship is critical, isn't it? I mean, we saw from the tape that you're working right with the dog, and you can cause the dog to make a mistake.
Yes, and that's what most commonly happens. I give seminars and stuff now, and usually in the beginning, people are really happy with their dogs. The dogs are learning the equipment. And then, as they start getting upper levels, they think they've told the dog to do one thing by pointing at it, but maybe their body turned the other way, and the dog just misinterprets the cue and goes a different direction. And they.
On that note, I have to bring the permanent conclusion. That's always
okay.
happens to us, Barbara. We have to end before we want to.
Okay.
The clock always wins on television. On behalf of Steve Shink, we thank both of you for being here. It's been a delightful 2 weeks dealing with World Championship Dog Agility. And we again congratulate you for bringing home the silver medal, and we know you'll have many other successes in the future. I hope you'll come back and share with us those successes. And
Sure, maybe we'll get to go to Portugal next year.
yeah, and we love having the dogs here. Ladies and gentlemen, I know you've enjoyed the 2 weeks we've had with this program on the showing dogs and championship activities, and I'd like to invite you to be with us again next week at the same time, and we'll discuss yet another issue. Until then, please have a good week. I am Tony Stewart.
Recorded on the campus of North Idaho College, Public Forum is the longest-running entirely college-produced program on PBS. Each episode is pre-recorded live and is an educational outreach from North Idaho College. Please join us again at this same time next week for another edition of Public Forum on this public television station.